welcome to New Reality With. Our guest today is Maude Bailey. She is Chief Digital Officer at Accor, the largest hospitality company in Europe and one of the largest in the world, with about 5,000 properties across more than 100 destinations. New Reality is a PhocusWire and Phocuswright produced program. I believe this is our 5th installment, and it's a chat with industry leaders about the changing landscape as a result of COVID-19. We will dive into the current situation at Accor, and then we will also discuss how things may change for the brand as well as the overall hospitality industry in a post-COVID world. So, Maude, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you making some time to talk.
My pleasure, Mitra. Hi.
Hi. So let's jump right in. Let's start by thinking back to the beginning of this crisis, which in a way feels like so long ago. You know, time has sort of entered this strange phenomenon right now. What was Accor's strategy in managing some of the guests that were in your properties as it started to become clear that this was a really serious issue?
Well, just to give you the context, the COVID crisis we are currently dealing with is an unprecedented crisis. Just to give you an example, to figure out the two previous strongest crises the hospitality industry had to face before were 2003 and 2009, where we had to face a decrease by 1.5% and then minus 9% of our revenue. Here with the COVID, Mitra, we are facing a decrease of our activity by 60%.
Wow.
So just to share with you the violence of the shock. So we had just launched Accor Live Limitless, our loyalty program, at the beginning of this year with a new digital ecosystem, new app, new website, and a new loyalty program with new statuses and new benefits, leveraging the ecosystem of not only 40 brands, but also new partnerships and new benefits. And suddenly, your business literally stops. So what we had to do is, first of all, to take care of our guests, back to your question, and to take care of our employees. So very rapidly, we switched to a remote mode, pushing all our employees on teleworking and making sure we will close our hotels to keep our clients safe. So just to give you another key figure, in March, 62% of our network all around the world, it's about 5,000 properties, was closed. So it was a very fast reaction to an unprecedented violent crisis. And the key word for us was taking care of the people, guests, as well as employees, with a lot of agility and reactivity.
So, and we will talk in just a moment about some of the issues around the closing, but let me just ask you this. I had spoken with an independent hotelier in Italy back in March when things were really in a pretty dire situation there. And he was very frustrated with how some of the major OTAs had handled cancellations and refunds for his properties. I'm just wondering, when you think back, what is your overall sentiment about the way the OTAs handled it for both your guests and for you as a partner?
You know, for me, there is a clear conviction and a strong one. The answer we have to give facing the crisis has to be a relevant balance between our guests and our owners' interest. As you know, since 2018, we have completely switched to an asset-light model. We just sold our last properties March 2020, which was a very good move, strategic move from Sébastien Bazin, our CEO, because it allowed us to have the necessary cash to face the crisis. But today we don't have one, but two clients, the guests staying in our hotels and the owners, whom we have to protect, to accompany, and to whom we have to deliver the best, solutions. So on our cancellation policy, we have been super clear. For flexible rates, guests could be reimbursed and they could cancel their bookings. And for non-flexible rates, also to protect the business, until 3 days before their arrival, they could cancel and be reimbursed. Or after these 3 days, they could have a voucher and they could reuse their booking so that we could at the same time take care of the guests and at the same time protect the business for the owners. And on OTAs, I don't want to be polemic, it's not the purpose of the conversation, but I think it's super important to keep in mind the need of a balance between guest interest and guest service and the owner's service, because one of our two clients is the owners. And some little owners have been suffering a lot because precisely of the violence of this crisis.
Yeah, it's been a very complex issue for sure, with so many different players involved. Let's talk a bit more then about the hotels. And you were talking about 62% were closed at one point, I believe I heard you say. So can you just briefly explain, how is a decision made as to when to reopen? Is that a local decision?
First of all, Amma, you may have two reasons for which you're closing an hotel. First, it can be a legal decision, administrative decision, depending the country where you are. We are currently in over 110 countries. You can imagine that the regulation isn't exactly the same everywhere. So an hotel can be closed for administrative reason, like we decide with public authority to close it for safety reason or whatever, or the hotel is still open, but the business owner, i.e. the owner running the business of the property, decides it's no worth keeping it open because you literally have no one willing to get into the hotel because you have such a low occupancy rate that it's not worth keeping it open. So those two reasons explain why in March, as you just said it, Mitra, we had 62% of our network closed. The good news is that now it's slightly improving. We do now have almost 60% of our network open.
Okay.
And we hope that by July, we could reach a 70% ratio of hotels open. But the thing is, beyond this percentage of our hotel network open, the other challenge is to make sure that in these hotels, which are now open, the occupancy rate improves. And this is an additional challenge.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, can you give us a sense of what is the occupancy rate that you're seeing? I mean, is it very, and are those open properties spread geographically, or are they more concentrated?
No, I mean, first of all, it depends on the sanitary situation of the country. You can imagine that where lockdown ceased, occupancy rate got better because people felt safe. The occupancy rate improvement will be clearly linked to two things. The will to get back to leisure or business travel and the capacity to have hotels which are now open. And two, it will be linked to trust. We need to give our clients not only the will to come back, but also the full trust to come back according to the sanitary situation. So on the evolution of the occupancy rate, in some very hit countries, we can still observe a below 20% occupancy rate, and sometimes it's a zero because it's strictly closed. And in some other countries which are more dynamic, like in Eastern Europe or Northern Europe, or even in China, you can already observe sometimes a 30 or 40% of occupancy rate. But once again, we have to be super careful. We may face a second wave, and we don't want it. And we have to be super disciplined on the sanitary reassurance we're going to provide to our guests.
Yeah, and we will talk about that in detail in just a moment, but let's just talk a bit more. So regarding these hotels as they reopen, I'm curious from a distribution standpoint, is it literally just a flick of a switch to sort of now make them available again through the OTAs?
Yeah.
And things like that.
And it's not only through the OTAs, Mitra, it's also through the new digital platform of Accor, i.e. our new website and our new mobile application, because clearly we do work pretty well with OTAs, but my purpose is to go direct as much as I can. With the new old promise, we also ensure our best price guarantee, i.e. on our website and on mobile application, we guarantee to our guests the certainty of getting the best rate. And the other situation, we commit ourselves to reimburse a 25% difference. So it's crystal clear and it's a strong all commitment. And yes, as soon as you are reopened, you can reopen the booking capacity online, but it's only the beginning of the journey of the reopening process. Why? Because in the field, locally speaking, you have to get people back to work and also get the hotel prepared to reopening. What does it mean concretely? New sanitary standards. I know you heard about the All Safe label we just launched, which implies a lot of things concretely at the hotel level. And two, make sure we also fully take social distanciation into account in shared public spaces like breakfast or restaurants, rooms, or the lobby. Make sure that at each interaction point in the guest journey in the hotel, things get even more fluid so that we better protect our guests and they feel safer when they get back to our hotels. So it's not an easy process.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit more about that All Safe plan. Big announcement about that, I think maybe about a month ago or so.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about, the key components of that, and how will one of your hotels look or feel different because of this?
Well, All Safe, long story short, was the conviction that if we wanted to get our clients back to our hotels, which we really want, we first have to give them trust and confidence in our capacity to welcome them and reassure them on perfectly respected sanitary norms. What does it mean concretely? We've just launched late April with Bureau Veritas, a worldwide key player on sanitary certification standards, sanitary guidelines. We elaborated these sanitary guidelines with different players, and now we shared these sanitary norms with all our hotels and owners. And the idea is that as soon as the hotel reopens, it commits itself to apply these sanitary standards. I'm going to give you some example. It's about amenities in the room, the way you clean the elevator buttons, the way you interact at the front desk with the clients, the way you are guaranteeing social distancing at the breakfast buffet, everything which prove that different sanitary standards and norms are applied and daily respected. And on top of that, as our hotels received the All Safe guidelines, we also started a labelization process, a certification process, where we just started here now. And the purpose is to make sure that our hotels get the All Safe label so that when our guests are booking online or getting into an hotel, they can be reassured saying, hey, this is a hotel which respects the All Safe standards. And it's a no-brainer. We have to do it.
So I had read, it said that the standards, that auditing and certification process they'll be audited either by Accor operational experts or third-party auditors to receive that label. That sounds like a really massive undertaking, just, of bodies checking and.
It is. It is. There is a very short-term reaction and a midterm, pretty heavy investment. So short-term reaction is, okay, we receive the sanitary new norms and guidelines, and as soon as the hotel reopens, we apply them, period. So clearly, you don't have to wait to get the certification to apply these sanitary norms, and I can tell you that our 60% now open hotels are strictly respecting and observing these sanitary guidelines. And on top of that, on a more midterm, i.e. 8, 10 coming weeks, we launched, in fact, the certification process, which can be achieved internally or by a third party, which will help us to get the label. But the need of confidence, the need of trust is so massive after the COVID crisis that to us, it is absolutely a no-brainer. And it's like an additional promise. We had all at the beginning of 2020 as a new loyalty promise, a new guest promise to interact with our guests. Somehow, it's a new old promise with All Safe, taking into account the COVID crisis. We couldn't behave as if nothing had happened. So it's a way to say, we understand what you've been going through, and we are adapting our guest experience consequently.
I don't recall if I heard you say, does the whole housekeeping process and operation change now? We hear that there won't be as much during a stay.
Exactly. I mean, once again, we are trying to digital every touch point, every non-value creation touch point. What am I suggesting? I.e., we are going to push digital checking, digital checkout, encourage, contactless payment, and also make sure that whenever our guests are interacting with staff, we can do it on the digital way to avoid any contact, any useless contact. Which doesn't mean we're not going to encourage an experience, a way to feel good at the hotel level. But everything you can digitize in the guest journey in the hotel, we will do so. And on the housekeeping rules, on the decoration of the rooms, clearly we will have new cleaning rules, new cleaning standards. I was mentioning the example of the elevator cleaning. Usually we don't clean the elevator that often. With the new sanitary standards, clearly the frequency is going to be increased. Likewise, for the room, design and the little amenities, we're going to make sure there are not that many touch points so that the clients are not exposed to any risk. It's a new world, and at the same time, it's also the reinforcements of some cleaning standards.
Do you, I know maybe it's a little bit difficult to answer this for certain sitting here today, but do you envision that this is a permanent change to the way things are handled, or is this maybe till there's a vaccine? I mean,
it's a very valid question. And the funny thing, Mitra, is that we had a discussion with my teams. My conviction, it's only me, is that sanitary norms, are going to become a full expected, part of the guest experience in the hotel. With different norms being integrating for the past years, accessibility norms, sustainable development norms, energy savings norms, fight against food wasting. Likewise, I'm sure that tomorrow we'll fully integrate these sanitary norms. And somehow, I think it's a good point because it's all about reassurance. The only thing is that it should not kill the experience, the capacity to still have emotion at the hotel level. Because if you kill any kind of interaction, it will be a bit tricky, a bit challenging to still create an emotion and an experience. But I think we can really find a way to really make these new sanitary norms becoming permanent as a new promise to make our guests feel safe. And at the same time, keep this emotional dynamic, which was at the core of all new promise.
So I know Accor has, is it 40 brands, close to 40 different brands?
Over 40 brands.
Over 40 brands, from the whole range, economy through luxury. Just can you briefly tell us, are there differences, first of all, that you're seeing there as far as occupancy even, and also then any differences that may continue moving forward and whether they can all survive?
Yeah. Back to you, the first dimension of your question, Mitra. So yes, our portfolio is extremely diversified. Accor used to have a rather mid-scale economic DNA with very well traditional brands as Mercure, Ibis, Novotel. For the past 6 years, under Sébastien Bazin, our CEO vision, we massively diversified this portfolio. So now, just for you to know, I don't know if you're aware, but we have in our portfolio Raffles, Fairmont, Swissôtel, Delano, Mondrian, all SBE brands, and also 21C, Movenpick, Mantra, Mama Shelter. So the idea is to have built a very comprehensive brand portfolio to try to meet the different guest expectations. Depending you're traveling for business or for leisure, alone or with your family, in Asia or in America, you may not have the same these expectations. So we've been trying to build this very huge and very diversified brands portfolio to meet the diversification expectation of our guests, which was really clear to us. On the way brands are reacting and facing the crisis, I think that the first segment, which is going to positively react and rebound, is clearly the economic and mid-scale segment. I think that the luxury segment will probably be the last one to recover. And if we look at what's happening in China, which is a bit for us a lab of the recovery trends, we can observe that mid-scale and economic brands are the start to recover with a pretty different guest profile, younger, no children, I mean, no risk aversion, and really encouraging a new mobility by car and not by airline at all. And so, yeah, I think not talking anymore about brands, but segment, mid-scale and economic segment should react and recover earlier. And traditional luxury business travel overseas will clearly be the last segment to recover.
But at this point, the thought is all of the brands can continue to be strong. And
yeah, because it's a short term and a midterm approach. On the short term, you have to be super crispy and make sure that on the way you respond to the crisis, you're relevant. So sanitary norms, all safe. You must have seen also the partnership we just launched with AXA to provide to our guests the possibility to have a medical tele-consultation online if they feel this need. It's a very short-term answer, and we need that, and we're expected to be super professional on this. On the more midterm approach, back to all philosophy, Accor, Live Limitless, ecosystem, I do strongly believe that in our new digital era, we need to interact more and more with our clients, and to multiple touch points with our clients, with our guests, we need to become liquid, i.e. we need to really increase our frequency of usage. So if you are more brands, you have a broader promise. If with your points, you can burn them in daily services like co-branded cars, mobility, co-working spaces, and at the same time, burn your points through incredible money can buy experiences like attending a VIP Elton John concert or Shakira concert or Maroon 5 concert. I mean, it's about multiplying the touch point, multiplying the frequency of usage for our ecosystem. And the fact to have over 40 brands is really consistent with this philosophy. You need to offer a diversified ecosystem to better attract and retain your guests.
So let me jump ahead, since you just mentioned the Accor Live Limitless and the loyalty program and some of the things that offers. I know that when that was launched, it was really based on this concept of kind of extraordinary experiences, is the terminology I see in some of your information, and helping people have a lot of those experiences that have nothing to do really with being in a hotel, going to a concert, a sporting event, that type of thing. So many of those types of experiences are on hold right now for the foreseeable future, those, big, massive gatherings. What does that, what challenges does that create for you, and how can you restyle that program to still provide something of value?
Okay, the first thing it creates is frustration, immense frustration. We just have to figure out, we just launched all early January. It was the result of 3 years of huge work with my teams, marketing team at central level, all the regional teams at central level, at the local level, and all the partners, the local team in the hotel who were super excited. During the night between the 2nd and the 3rd of December 2019, you have to realize, Mitra, we just pushed the button all together, central regions and local, and we switched into our new digital ecosystem. So it was a huge pride and the conviction we were going to where we were expected to go. New statuses, diamond statuses and limitless statuses in January, new benefits. And so we were thrilled. New partnership with PSG, you must have seen the jersey, IG, which is the extension of Accor Hotel Arena all around the world, and also IMG. You know, people are crazy about food festival.
Yeah.
Personally, I never attended that, but people love it. They love to attend master classes with chefs. And our guests were getting back to us saying, I love it. And frustration because the positive sign is just Accor Limitless, whereas it's just its very first weird launch year, just received 7 Freddie Awards, which is one of the highest loyalty recognition in the world. Whereas I didn't have the full means to fully seize the potential of this new loyalty program. So my first reaction is it creates frustration. The second reaction is that the philosophy is a good one. During the crisis, we adapted all philosophy, i.e., starting from our guest with a very emotional loyalty program, encouraging frequency of usage with daily services as well as extraordinary experiences, keeping the link, the connection with the guest. We switched this philosophy from the hotel to a remote world, and we created all at home. All at home, you start from your guests, you talk to their passions, sport, entertainment, food and beverage, and you offer them online in spite of this crazy COVID crisis, this experience. So we organize online master classes with chefs, DG sets with very famous DG, and also sport training with PSG players or Teddy Riner on Juno and stuff like that. So we're trying to keep the spirit of all, and our conviction is as soon as business will recover and will get back, we will fully have the opportunity to seize, to collect the all benefits. And I can't wait. We are so looking forward to seeing we were right to launch all. And we've been receiving very nice support messages from our guests saying, we know what we've been designing, all done. Just wait that the crisis goes away and we will be there.
Yeah, it certainly has spurred a lot of creativity, I guess.
A lot of creativity. And on a more personal note, I also do believe, Mitra, that guests are going to get back to Accor for 2 reasons. The first reason is for sure the relevance of the offer, the cleanliness guidelines, all safe, capacity to provide a best-in-class experience. But on top of that, I do believe that guests will also get back to us or go to Accor because of the way the company will have reacted, who have answered to the crisis. It's also more dealing with CSR, social commitment, the purpose of our private, paradoxically, I know listed company, but which can also really show a social purpose. And I think it's a kind of signature for our guests too. I hope I'm going to be chosen for this reason too.
Okay, we're just going to take a quick break and then we'll get into a lot more to discuss with Maude Bailey.
With pleasure.
We'll be right back. If you're looking for more great content, check out How I Got Here, a weekly podcast with people that have led successful startups and created cutting-edge innovations in travel and transportation. Produced by PhocusWire and Mozio, it has a catalog that includes Steve Kaufer of TripAdvisor, Kayak, Steve Hafner, Expedia's Ariane Gorin, and more. We get the stories behind these companies, the highs and lows, and a lot of gritty details. How I Got Here is available on PhocusWire.com and all the usual podcast platforms. Hi, welcome back. We are with Maude Bailey, Chief Digital Officer of Accor. Thanks again for being with us. So let's get right back into our discussion. We have just been talking about some of the ways you have creatively redesigned your loyalty program. I am wondering, recently, I think just a couple of weeks ago, Expedia announced this partner recovery program that gives participating brands 25% of what they had spent on commissions in 2019 with Expedia in the form of marketing credits. In exchange for that, you have to give them your lowest retail rates, some competitive pricing on packages, member-only deals. I heard you say earlier, one of the promises you make to your members is the best rate. So how does all this play out for you, and what are your thoughts on this?
So just for you to know, I mean, OTAs are key partners for us, like other digital intermediaries. I mean, we need them, I guess, as much as they need us, our hotel inventory. So the partnership, the cooperation, the interaction with OTA didn't start just with COVID. To talk more specifically about the Expedia marketing plan, recovery marketing plan, we for sure looked at it and we just said we're not interested. But it's fine, i.e. maybe it could interest some independent hotels. In our situation, thing is, back to what you said, because we clearly promise the best price guarantee on our website, because we clearly work pretty well with OTA, but at the same time, clearly also want to push our direct promise and our direct channel. We clearly acknowledge that we were not interested because we considered that this marketing offer was not the best one for us, considering our guests as well as our owners' interest. But you know, it's business as usual. I mean, they are launching offers, we take it or not, which doesn't mean we don't work with them anymore. We are on the opposite, working with them daily. But in this very specific case, we said, hey guys, thank you, nice to offer, but we're not going to take it. And on our side, we are launching for sure some recovery plan in our regions.
Okay. Well, we will look forward to hearing about that as you're able to tell us about that in the future. Let's talk briefly about, I think it was January of this year, you announced the deal with Sabre for a combined PMS and CRS. Any updates on that? Any changes with that due to COVID?
Well, you know, the intention is exactly the same, and we are very proud to have launched and announced this partnership. I do strongly believe that we need to merge our CRS and PMS solution. We need to fully migrate to a cloud solution to reduce the IT cost for the owners, to make sure that our IT architecture becomes even more agile and up to date, and also to ensure compliance, standards. Because when you have switched everything to the cloud, your IT solution is even more compliant because you can, update all the compliance standards very rapidly. So I think it's a very great deal. We just signed this partnership and announced it last January. Sabre has been hit and affected just the same way Accor has been affected. Everyone has been affected by the crisis. Now, I know that we are still working very closely with Sabre teams. We will still work together. Maybe we will have to review the timeline. I still don't really have some clarity on this, but the will is still clear, and we clearly have to go through this new technological architecture. It will be a win-win for the guests, for the company, and for the owners. So let's make it happen. The sooner, the better. Let's adapt the timeline.
Are there any other quick thoughts that you have about how technology can be part of the solution moving forward? Any new tools that your, property managers need, owners need?
Anything which can digitize the friction point of the contact point, which are not creating value for the guest. Anything which can make the journey for our guest more fluid will make sense. Before the stay, during the stay, and after the stay. You have to book online on a very optimized booking funnel. Your mobile application has to be super intuitive and fast with fewer clicks. You have to be able to do everything with the thumb. Yeah. And during the stay, as you are checking in, Mitra, I'm not sure you're going to wait 40 minutes being exhausted after an interview with me, waiting in the line. So you just want to get your mobile, check in, registering your ID document or your credit card, making sure that your data are fully protected, because I'm a strong believer of privacy. And also feeling valued and recognized, and then having a digital checkout and maybe tomorrow a digital key so that you can unlock your room and get some rest.
Okay, before we move into some broader discussions about the industry as a whole, just one other question related to Accor specifically. Can you give us a sense of what's happening with your pipeline as far as new properties? Any updates there, things put on hold?
Yeah, it's funny because people are often observing recovery trends just using one KPI, which is a percentage of currently reopened. And today, as I shared this with you previously, we're today at almost 60% of our network open again. But you could also look at the occupancy rate for sure, but also at the pipeline, i.e. the opening pipeline, i.e. the development perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were sharing this morning at the highest level was that paradoxically, May and June are very hard months, talking about business and occupancy rate and the financial shock for the industry. But at the same time, negotiations are still moving on, and we still have a lot of openings planned in the pipe, and we project our core network to extend even more with pretty good figures. So I can't share the figures with you, but what I can tell you is that we had a very dynamic first quarter, talking about development and new openings of properties. And for the second quarter, we still observe a pretty dynamic trend in spite of the crisis, which is a very encouragement KPI for us, proving that no matter how harsh the crisis is, there is still an appetite for the hospitality industry. And this should give us a lot of hope.
So let's talk a bit more broadly now. How do you sense that the recovery is going to proceed marketing-wise across the industry? We talked a bit briefly about your thoughts related to OTAs and more specifically about Accor's relationship. But overall, do you see the dynamic changing between direct versus OTA versus meta, those sorts of things?
So two things to answer your question. First, on the way we are going to use marketing to talk to our guests, I think a new dimension, a new component of marketing will clearly appear. It's the sanitary reassurance marketing, which is pretty new and unexpected, but clearly you will have to emphasize this new marketing dimension. Two, I think what we are going to target, the markets which we are going to target, are going to be much more local and domestic at the beginning. And when I say beginning, it may last for at least 12 months, maybe 18 months. We clearly sense that people are going to start traveling again, but in a more domestic, local scope. Using the car and really expecting us to reassure them on sanitary standards. So the way we are going to market our product are going to be adapted according to these new expectations. And on OTAs, back to the second point of your question, nothing will really change, i.e. our whole strategy, Accor Live Limitless, is clearly also a direct strategy to encourage our guests to go directly on our ecosystem and our channel, website and mobile application, because they will find there the best price, and they will find exclusive benefits they couldn't have if they were booking our hotels through OTAs. So the idea is to clearly give our guests the conviction that if they book direct, they will get some benefits and collect points they can redeem in great experiences or daily services they wouldn't have if they were going through OTAs. So the challenge is remaining the same on OTAs, but on marketing strategy, I think it will slightly be adapted, revised according to the new post-crisis expectations.
Do you see any differences or advantages for traditional hotels versus short-term rentals?
Yes, I get that we do have a very strong power. It's the capacity to apply the same discipline level, talking about sanitary standards. I mean, when we launched with Bureau Veritas in Europe, the label, making sure that all our hotels will apply the same sanitary guidelines, making sure that certification audits will be launched all around the world. i.e., I think it's more challenge to ensure the same sanitary standards when you're talking about private rental. I guess it's a bit more challenging. I'm not saying they should not do it. I'm sure they already are trying to do it. But the thing is, when you have a huge collective united network, it's easier to say, hey guys, this is a key expectation and we have to ensure it. You have to guarantee it. And here is a label, here are the guidelines, and please now let's apply them.
I'm curious, where do you get data, or how do you gauge traveler sentiment? I feel like right now we are inundated. I know, it's just speaking me personally, we are inundated with research reports being sent to us, surveys. Hey, travelers want this, travelers want that. After COVID, they're going to want to do this, do that. It's a lot of noise sometimes. I'm just wondering if you can share at all, what do you trust as far as gauging future sentiment?
I trust my guest first.
Yeah.
So get closer to the source. I mean, I'm trying to spend a lot of time listening to the guest, listening to the owners, listening to what people expect from tomorrow. And yes, I agree with you. We do have a lot of very quality survey, but too many surveys. And at one point, just want to step back and say, hey, listen, so which are the big trends? To us, what is very clear is that there will be this expectation of more sanitary reassurance. There will be new behaviors around more domestic, local destinations. On mobility, people will really take the car first. We could observe that on Labor Day in China and during Memorial Day in the US. It was obvious. Sometimes people spend 14 hours in their car to enjoy a 4-day stay in one of our brands in the US. So, I mean, people will really encourage the car instead of airlines or any other long distance mobility. And I think there will be probably looking for something which will be more connected with to nature,
Mm-hmm.
not overcrowded, which is quite obvious, and making sure that they are not crossing 10% every 2 minutes. So it's also for us an opportunity, maybe because I'm an optimistic person, the opportunity to reconsider our offer, creating new packages, fitting and meeting these new expectations.
I know that earlier in your career, you spent a lot of time in the rail industry. I'm just curious, is this rail's time to capitalize? We hear that people aren't going to necessarily feel comfortable flying as much. Certainly the rail network in Europe is a big part of travel.
Yeah, but I think that rail industry is going to suffer a lot too, because no matter what, it's not really easy to implement social distanciation in a rail car. So I mean, we'll still have to, find a lot of creativity in order to make sure people ensure social distancing in a train on board. For sure, people will not take the plane again before weeks or months. If you ask around you, it's obvious. Train, why not? But in a new ecosystem with a new, seats allocation in the train.
Right.
And once again, each crisis, it's a huge machine of creativity. It's a huge machine of frugality. How can we make sure that this frugality becomes constructive for everyone? But it's a real challenge. I'm not sure that rail industry will recover that fast, and unfortunately.
So, speaking of frugality, clearly, even as the travel restrictions ease and maybe as the actual health issues start to abate a bit, there's going to be this deep economic pain across much of the world for some time to come. I'm just wondering, is that the economic difficulties sort of the second wave of the COVID-19 fallout as far as the travel industry?
We are in a very tricky moment. Why? The sanitary crisis seems to go away. But paradoxically, winter may be coming. Why? Because winter is the second phase of COVID, and the second phase of COVID might not be the nicest one. It's the economic crisis. So during the immediate sanitary crisis, our teams have been super committed at each level. You must have seen that we decided to, bring our hotels to welcome medical staff fighting against COVID, to welcome fragile population like beaten women or homeless people. We decided to maintain this raison d'etre. And at each level, you must have heard that our board decided to allocate 25% of the dividend of Accor 2019 dividend to a dedicated fund to support our employees and our weakest owners, to help them to face the crisis. And that in the same spirit, we decided to open two hotels to welcome all the people who needed to be taken care of, because our DNA is to take care of people. So it was a very, exciting moment, tough, but also exciting moment. As the sanitary crisis goes away, hopefully for everyone, here comes the deeper, more lasting economic crisis. And yes, I'm concerned because the recovery perspective assume a requested time of at least 12 to 15 months in the best case scenario, and with a loss of revenue which may last no matter what after the crisis, an economic halo, we call this, of maybe 5 or 10%. So it's a tricky moment because sanitary crisis may have gone and we are all crossing fingers about this. And at the same time, we feel economic crisis is still here. And it's not only about industry, it's about, it's also for governments, for, people. How are we going to manage to recover collectively? And how are we going to manage to prepare ourselves better to the coming crisis? So, I'm trying to keep the faith and energy for my team, and we are all really committed to reboost our business. But yes, the second dimension of the crisis, the economic one, is certainly not going to be the easiest one.
A lot to digest there for sure, and I'm sure we'll be hearing much more, in the coming weeks and months. Very interesting to see how things progress. So I'm afraid we are out of time. My goodness, that's gone very fast. We covered
very fast.
Maud Bailey, Chief Digital Officer of Accor. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing these insights on New Reality with. Take care.
Thank you so much, Mitra. See you very soon, and take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.